Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very special edition of the Next Fan Up podcast because if you're a newer fan of our show, you know that we try and do our best to keep the podcast to a reasonable length when covering 16 teams and trying to give you as much in-depth perspective from every fan that we can on all 16 games. We try and keep that right around an hour and a half or so. Today's show is a throwback to the original Next Fan Up podcast, where you have 5 super fans all talking about the future of the NFL on top of talking about the Week 17 matchups. I mean, we're talking about future head coaching choices.
Is there any scenario that you think could save Jason Garrett? I mean, he would literally have to win the Super Bowl or he's done.
Well, I understand he still has those incriminating pictures.
We're talking about the state of transportation for some of these players in the NFL.
I just think that there's just so much of a difference between Stafford versus Curtis Blow or whoever the quarterback is. I mean,
Curtis Blow.
You got to pump the brakes. Brakes on a bus, brakes on a car, Pod.
Talk us through that one, Neil.
Okay. Phil Rivers gets in his car, drives to the train station, gets a train to Indianapolis, and goes to the stadium. There you go.
We don't have trains in the U.S., Neil.
It is an in-depth look at Week 17 and the 2020 NFL season, all on this edition of Next Fan Up. Here we go.
I wonder what's Shaka Khan doing these days. I like her.
That's how we start! Yeah, baby!
32 super fans.
Where do the reports come from? Did you get an initial?
1 PodVader.
That's football.
Every angle of the NFL covered.
All that kind of stuff, I get it.
This
no question about it.
Is Next Fan Up.
We're going to unleash hell here in December.
Hello and welcome to the final edition of the regular season podcast of Next Fan Up podcast. Hello, everybody. PodVader here. Said podcast too many times in a row, but hey, what the heck? That's what happens when you do this off the cuff. It is Week 17 of the NFL, and as always, I am joined by a multitude of super fans. James, the Eagles super fan, who's the only one who's a regular on Thursdays. That we know a multitude is nothing that we ever experience.
Nah, and let me start by saying happy Kwanzaa, happy winter solstice, happy Boxing Day, and whatever else it is you're celebrating. And for all you fans in the New England area, a very merry bah humbug to you.
Oh, well, thanks. We really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Across the seas, I hear that it is Boxing Day, and the man who fixed his Wi-Fi is none other than Neil, our Washington Redskins superfan. Hello, Neil.
Hey, Jay. Hey, guys. Great to be back. So it's been crazy with this Wi-Fi nonsense, but, I never thought I'd miss you quite half as much as I do. It's absolute madness.
The first one to respond joining us on this very happy day after Christmas edition of Next Fan Up was Rob, our Buffalo Bills superfan. Hello, Rob. Welcome to the playoffs.
Yeah. I'm glad to be here. School's not in session right now, so I'm able to sneak in on a Thursday morning.
Plus, Rob had the distinct advantage of doing the wrap-up show with me on Week 16. So that's why he was first. The guy who said he must really love us because he set an alarm to make sure that he was with us. And Neil is already accused of being on the Christmas punch. It's Monty, our Raiders superfan. Welcome to Las Vegas.
Oh, Pod, I had a glass or too much of Christmas cheer last night, but I did want to jump in here and pay my respects to a national treasure. Beast Mode is back in the NFL. It was a hell of a Christmas gift. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Looking forward to having some fun in the playoffs.
I'm sorry. I believe you mispronounced that. It's Beast a la Mode. That's his new nickname for this.
Show some respect, Pod. Taste the rainbow and show some respect.
nextfanup@gmail.com is the way to get in touch with us. You can tweet us at NFU Podcast, Facebook.com/NFU Podcast. I saw Will got involved with a little Facebook conversation with us, talking about the New England Patriots and whom we might want to see in the upcoming playoffs. We're going to talk about all that. Here's the deal with today's show. It's going to be there is going to be organization, as we'll still go through all the picks as we normally do. But quite honestly here, this is what I want to start with you for. This is week 17. Almost all of the playoff teams have been decided, essentially. I mean, the Raiders still have sort of an outside chance with a bunch of teams having to win for them to get in. But ultimately, the playoffs are pretty much set. The NFL PR working overtime, trying to send me press releases saying, oh, so much is up in the air. Nothing's up in the air. Seeding, I mean, other than the first round bye, I mean, who cares, quite honestly, when it comes to the playoffs? In this particular year, we talked about the road teams having a huge advantage this season. So home field advantage isn't even a thing, really, this particular year. So quite honestly, who cares about the seeding? This is like a preseason game. And now the league wants us to add 2 more weeks to this. So I'll start with you, Rob. If we added 2 more weeks to the regular season, would we have 3 pointless weeks, or would we, or would this be dragged on a little bit further? Would we have a little bit more intrigue, drama, if you will?
I think there'd be more intrigue. I think the reason why the intrigue is kind of stopped is because we're about, 1 game out and a lot of stuff has been decided. But if we did have 3 more games, I think, theoretically, teams, say the Raiders they need some things to happen in order to make Sunday real interesting. They got a couple more weeks to kind of, do what they need to do to kind of push that type of thing in happening in their direction. So I think, whether you think 18 weeks or, 19 weeks is too long is kind of a different discussion, but I think there would still, we would still have, kind of the ongoing thing right now. And I think it would just last until week 19 or whatever it was.
I mean, James, you're a team that's also sort of on the cusp of the playoffs here. You've got a win to get in. Do you need the Cowboys to lose too, right?
Nope, just win.
You're the one that needs to win.
Or a Cowboys loss. Yeah, it's one or the other, not both.
Okay.
A Cowboys loss. You see who they're playing, James?
Yeah, trust me. I know who they're playing, and I wish a particular quarterback for your squad was playing, because I'd pick you to win if he was, but he's not.
Right.
It's also not in the Redskins' best interests to win this week at all.
No, we won our bowl game. We won our bowl game last week, the Chase Young Bowl. We won that last week. So a terrific, outstanding loss against the Giants. So happy days.
Monty, do you want 2 more weeks for your Raiders?
Just keeps the bottom feeder teams alive a little bit longer. The Cleveland fan base might be a little more interested if the game was going on. I think that if this is all just a money grab and they're trying to just make a little more revenue, why not get rid of these stupid rules of you can only have 1 game when your home team is on the air? Like, just do double headers on all the channels, make them pay for all the commercials, get some nerds with some spreadsheets in there to make sure the money works out and the networks can get their money back. And
that's a disgraceful thing to say, Monty. It's not about money; it's about sport and integrity.
Right. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. Put down that glass.
I would like to point out, this is a week where those rules are thrown out the window. We have 7 4:00 games, which is, we never get that. The most we get is like 5 if we're lucky. And most weeks it's been 2 or 3 4:00 games.
Well, Pod, actually the last 2 or 3 years, they've done the even split between 1 and 4 so that teams with, quote, something to play for as far as getting the playoffs, whether it's seeding or actually getting in or even divisional titles, to make all those teams play at the same time. So we've had this even split routinely going back at least 3 years. At least for this week of the season.
The one last thing I'd add in there, Pod, is that I would not mind if Super Bowl Sunday was the Sunday before the, I think it's President's Day in February, or there's a holiday there. So if they stretched it out another week or 2 so we all had that Monday off, I could sign up for that. I didn't even hate it when they used to have 2 bye weeks back in the 80s or 90s. But, at the end of the day, if you're just trying to get a little more money in there, I think you could do a better job with the scheduling and the the TV games and just make it happen.
Wait, you guys don't take off the day after the Super Bowl?
Depends on what I've got cooking, but usually it's been towards the early part of the month, so I just got work to do. I mean, me notwithstanding, not everyone can, right? But if it was a national holiday.
I thought it was. I'd normally take it off.
Well, I see where you're going there with that, Monty. It's interesting because if I were adding 2 more weeks, I'm clearly taking 2 preseason games off, and we're starting the season earlier in August. But maybe it does make a little bit more sense to play later so that you do have that holiday after the Super Bowl. That would be kind of nice. They should just back schedule to that holiday anyway. That would be perfect.
If the NFL did the things that made the most sense, they wouldn't be on the airwaves all the time. People have to have something to complain about.
That's also a good point. So let's start diving into some of these things. One note before we get into the games, including 2019, with the Buffalo Bills, Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings, and San Francisco 49ers, since the 12-team playoff format was adopted in 1990, a streak of 30 consecutive seasons, at least 4 teams have qualified for the playoffs in every season that were not in the postseason the year before. That, I think, is interesting in this day and age of parity and, of course, of Patriot Super Bowl dominance. Still, for 30 straight years, 4 teams that didn't make the playoffs the year before made it the next year. That's some good consistency there.
It's fun. I like it. Little turnover in the league keeps people involved, keeps people interested in their team. Everyone's got a chance in April, right?
I think so.
Except Cleveland. Everybody but Cleveland.
Except for Cleveland. Cleveland will never see the playoffs. It's just a pipe dream, Cleveland. So as we go through this, let's think about perhaps team MVPs, postseason awards, and look ahead at what some of these teams have to look ahead to in 2020. And before I forget, I'd like to congratulate Redskin fan forever, Catherine Magruder. She has won our Pigskin Pick'em League this year. She's up 5 with, of course, this last week to go. So don't screw it up, Catherine. But most likely Catherine will be taking home the crown of the Pigskin Pick'em League. And this year it is a hearty pat on the back. It's a wonderful prize this season.
Here, Catherine. Cheers.
So we kick off at 1:00 with the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Falcons 6-9, Bucks 7-8. Falcons are 20th in the power rankings. The Bucks are 18. The spread on this, Vegas says, yeah, go ahead and just pick them because we have no idea who's going to win this one either. I'm calling this the battle of meaningless offenses. Matt Ryan passed for 385 yards in Week 16, is one of 2 quarterbacks. Jameis Winston's the other, with 10-plus games of 300-plus passing yards in 2019. Jameis Winston joined Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Peyton Manning as the only quarterbacks with 11-plus games of 300-plus passing yards in a single season in NFL history. He'll aim for his 4th in a row versus Atlanta with 300-plus passing yards. He only needs 2 more interceptions for the 30-30 season. We're all taking the Buccaneers in this one. And this does get us to one of our most interesting free agent questions, Jameis Winston. It does seem like, Rob, since you're down in that particular area, that Jameis Winston is due to return to Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians seems to be all in.
Yeah, he's I feel like him. He's like one of those players that you just can't quit. He shows enough flashes that you're just always going to be able, especially, given it's, Arians spent 1 year with him. He's going to convince himself that he can fix the problems of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is like that 9 out of 10 that gets too drunk at the bar all the time. But you kind of deal with her because she's a 9. I think he gets paid. I think he's going to get about $30 million a year from Tampa Bay. I think at the very least they franchise him. they have a lot of money to spend. They got about 90 mil. They do have a couple guys they got to look after as far as signing. But, I mean, if you don't roll with Jameis,